Have you ever noticed something strange? The biggest goals in your life are usually not destroyed by failure. They're destroyed by waiting until you're ready, waiting until you're motivated, waiting until life feels easier. And while you're waiting, weeks disappear, months disappear, sometimes years disappear. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes next week becomes next month. And eventually you wake up wondering where all the time went. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are not trapped by laziness. They're trapped by a dangerous belief. A belief so common that almost everyone accepts it as fact. The belief that motivation comes before action. But what if that's backwards? What if waiting to feel motivated is exactly what's keeping you stuck? Today I want to tell you a story. A story about an ordinary man who spent years waiting for the right moment. A man who knew exactly what he needed to do but never did it. Until a chance encounter with an elderly Japanese immigrant introduced him to a philosophy so powerful, that it completely changed the direction of his life. A philosophy called Gaman, and once you understand it, you'll never look at procrastination the same way again. Chapter 1: The Man Who Was Always About to Begin. Marcus Thompson was 34 years old. He lived in Columbus, Ohio. From the outside, his life looked fine. Steady job, apartment downtown, long-term relationship, reliable income. Nothing was obviously wrong. Yet every night before falling asleep, Marcus felt the same quiet frustration. Because there was another life he was supposed to be living. A life that existed only in his head. For years he dreamed about writing a novel, starting a business, getting into the best shape of his life, traveling, building something meaningful, becoming the person he knew he could be. And every Sunday evening, filled with fresh optimism, he created a new plan. This time would be different. This time he would wake up early. This time he would be disciplined. This time he would finally start. He bought notebooks, downloaded productivity apps, watched motivational videos, read self-improvement books. His bookshelf looked like a museum dedicated to personal growth. Yet somehow, nothing changed. Every Monday morning, the alarm rang at 5 a.m. Every Monday morning, Marcus hit snooze, just 10 more minutes, then another 10 and another. Before he knew it, it was time to rush to work again. The same cycle repeated itself for years. Not because Marcus didn't care. The truth was almost worse. He cared deeply. He thought about his dreams constantly. He imagined success, planned success, talked about success. But action never arrived. At work, he spent 8 hours analyzing spreadsheets for a logistics company. The job paid well enough. But every day felt exactly like the one before it. Rows of numbers, meetings that led nowhere, projects he didn't care about. By the time he got home, he felt mentally drained, or at least that's what he told himself. His routine never changed. Dinner, phone, social media, videos, scrolling, more scrolling. Then suddenly it was midnight, and another day was gone. His unfinished novel sat inside a folder on his laptop. The file contained exactly one page, a page written 8 months earlier. Every time he opened it, he promised himself he'd continue tomorrow. Tomorrow. That word had become the soundtrack of his life. When friends asked about the book, he said, "I'm working on it." When his girlfriend asked about starting the business he'd talked about for 3 years, he said, "I'm waiting for the right time." When his father called and he didn't answer, he promised he'd call back tomorrow. Tomorrow. Always tomorrow. The strange thing was that Marcus understood exactly what was happening. He wasn't confused, he wasn't unaware. He could see the pattern clearly. He knew he was postponing the life he wanted. He knew excuses were controlling him. He knew the future version of himself would regret it. Yet knowing changed nothing. Because every time he tried to act, something stopped him. Not a physical obstacle, not a real problem, just a feeling. A lack of energy, a lack of excitement, a lack of desire, and he treated those feelings as instructions. If he didn't feel ready, he waited. If he didn't feel inspired, he postponed. If he didn't feel motivated, he stopped. What Marcus didn't realize was that he had unknowingly trained himself to become dependent on motivation, and that dependency was quietly stealing years from his life. Then one night, something happened that forced him to confront the truth. A conversation he couldn't ignore. A conversation that would eventually lead him to a park bench. An elderly Japanese man. And a lesson that would completely change the way he understood action, discipline, and the human mind. Chapter 2. The call he couldn't ignore. It happened on a Thursday night. Marcus was lying in bed, phone inches from his face. His thumb moved automatically. Scroll, scroll, scroll. One video after another, one distraction replacing the last. He wasn't even enjoying it anymore. He was simply avoiding silence because silence forced him to face something he didn't want to admit. Another day had ended, and he had done nothing that mattered. Then his phone rang. It was Diane, his girlfriend. They had been together for almost 2 years. Diane wasn't dramatic, she wasn't demanding, she wasn't the type to start arguments over small things. Which is why Marcus answered immediately. "Hey." There was a pause. Then Diane spoke. "Marcus, can I ask you something honestly?" "Sure. When are you going to start living your life?" The question hit harder than he expected. "What do you mean?" "You know exactly what I mean." Marcus sat up. "Diane, no, listen." Her voice wasn't angry, that made it worse. It sounded disappointed. "I've listened to you talk about your book for years. I know. I've listened to you talk about your business. I know. I've listened to you talk about getting healthier." Marcus stared at the ceiling. "You always sound excited when you talk about these things." She continued. "You have plans. You have ideas. You have goals." Another pause. "But whenever it's time to actually do something, you disappear." The room suddenly felt smaller. Marcus tried defending himself. "I'm just exhausted lately." Silence. Then Diane asked a question he couldn't answer. "You're exhausted from what?" Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out, because deep down, he knew. He wasn't exhausted from effort. He was exhausted from avoidance. There is a difference. People who work towards something meaningful become tired. People who constantly avoid meaningful things become drained. One creates fulfillment, the other creates frustration. And Marcus had spent years feeding frustration. Diane sighed softly. "I love you." That hurt even more. "But I don't know how to help someone who refuses to help himself." The call ended. Marcus remained awake for hours. No videos, no distractions, just silence. And for the first time in a long time, the excuses stopped working. Chapter 3. The Stranger in the Park. The next day felt different, not better, heavier. At work, Marcus stared at spreadsheets without seeing them. His mind kept replaying Diane's words. "When are you going to start living your life?" Around lunchtime, he couldn't take it anymore. He left the building. No destination, no plan, just walking. A few blocks away sat a small park, a park he had passed hundreds of times, yet somehow never entered. Today he did. The trees were quiet, the air was cool, and on a bench near the center of the park sat an elderly man reading a book. There was something unusual about him. Not his clothes, not his age, his presence. While everyone else rushed through life, this man looked completely still, completely here, as if nothing was pulling him away from the moment. Marcus found himself sitting on the same bench. For several minutes, neither spoke. Then the old man closed his book. Without looking up, he said, "You look like a man carrying too many tomorrows." Marcus blinked. "What?" The old man smiled. "You have the face." "The face?" "The face of someone always preparing to begin." Marcus almost laughed. Yet somehow, the stranger had described his entire life in one sentence. "My name is Satoshi," the old man said. "Marcus." Satoshi nodded, then returned his attention to the trees, as if the conversation were already finished. But Marcus wasn't ready to leave. Something about the old man made him curious. Maybe because he looked peaceful. Maybe because Marcus couldn't remember the last time he felt that way. Eventually he asked, "How did you know?" Satoshi smiled. "I've spent many years watching people." Marcus hesitated. Then something surprising happened. He started talking about the book, the business, the goals, the procrastination, the frustration, everything. For nearly 40 minutes, Satoshi listened without interrupting once. No advice, no lectures, just attention. When Marcus finally finished, the old man asked one question. "When you avoid these things?" Marcus nodded. "How do you feel before avoiding them?" Marcus thought. "Tired, overwhelmed, unmotivated." Satoshi nodded. "And after avoiding them?" A longer pause. "Worse." The old man smiled. "Exactly." Chapter 4, the word that changed everything. Satoshi leaned back. Then he said a single word. "Gaman." Marcus frowned. "Gaman? It's a Japanese philosophy. What does it mean?" Satoshi looked toward the sky. "There is no perfect English translation." Then he continued. "It means enduring discomfort with dignity. It means continuing when every emotion tells you to stop. It means doing what is necessary whether you feel like doing it or not." Marcus crossed his arms. "Sounds like discipline." "No." Satoshi shook his head. "Discipline is what people see. Gaman is what happens before discipline." Marcus waited. The old man continued. "Most people believe they need motivation first. They think action follows feeling. I feel inspired, therefore I act." He smiled. "But reality works differently. Action creates feeling." Marcus frowned. "That sounds backwards." "It is. That's why most people fail." Satoshi pointed toward a nearby jogging path. A woman was running, clearly tired, clearly uncomfortable, yet still moving. "Do you think she waited until she felt amazing before starting?" Marcus watched her. "No. Exactly. She started. And because she started, her energy changed, her state changed, her emotions changed." Satoshi turned toward Marcus. "Your brain has trained you to believe that motivation is required. It isn't. What is required is movement." Marcus stayed silent. The words felt simple, too simple, yet something inside him knew they were true. Because every major achievement in his life had started exactly that way, not with excitement, with action. Then Satoshi said something Marcus would never forget. "The problem is not that you don't trust motivation. The problem is that you trust it too much." Marcus stared at him, and for the first time, he began questioning everything he believed about procrastination.